Welcome to EDO Breakthrough, the podcast where we tackle economic development challenges head on. From small towns to bustling cities, every place has its own hurdles to overcome. The EDO Breakthrough podcast creates an environment of collaboration, innovation, and understanding where we can share our real-life challenges and brainstorm solutions. I'm your host, Sandy Dubé, a certified economic developer and founder of PPR Strategies. Each week, we'll be welcoming a different, brilliant, place-based mind to talk through real-life economic development challenges that have been shared with us by you, our gracious listeners. I'm here today with Sarah Mattson, who is the Director of Entrepreneurship for the City of Chattanooga, as we are doing this recording. But Sarah, do you want to talk to me a little bit about you and maybe some things that you have on the horizon?
Yeah, thank you for having me on your podcast. Again, my name is Sarah Mattson, Director of Entrepreneurship for the City of Chattanooga. That is a position that our mayor created about 2 years ago because he really wanted a strong emphasis on supporting entrepreneurs in our community. He's an entrepreneur himself, and he also really runs his administration with a very entrepreneurial mindset. So encourages us to really approach everything entrepreneurially and innovatively. So he really wanted someone working on or waking up every day thinking about small businesses. How can we support them? How can we help them? How can we make it easier? So I always tell people that my role in the city is to make Chattanooga the easiest and most fun place to do business. So fun in the sense of like having events and collaboration, a big sense of that entrepreneurial spirit in the city and celebrating our entrepreneurs, and easy in the sense of like policy, like updating old policies that don't apply or create barriers and make things more difficult for entrepreneurs. So I've been doing this role for about 2 years, and it's been a lot of fun. City government has all kinds of different projects. I mean, it's like choose your adventure every day, and have a lot of great projects in the works. We are about to have our second annual Chattanooga Entrepreneur Week, which is a collaboration with our Business Resource Collective, which I'm sure we'll probably talk a little bit more about, and our local credit union is our co-presenter for that. So that's one of the ways that we're really celebrating entrepreneurs in Chattanooga, and many other projects and events. I'm not sure how deep you want me to get into that to start, but
It's good. I can see you're just,
I could just keep talking for hours.
on a roll. That's great. It makes it a lot of fun. Before we dive in deep, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey and how you got to this entrepreneurial support economic development space.
Yeah,
Can you talk
thank
about that a
you.
little bit?
For sure. It really is a dream job. And when I meet a lot of people, they're like, your job sounds so fun. And I'm like, it really is. And I'm too wonder sometimes how I got here. But I kind of have to go backwards. So before I worked at the city, I worked at our local small business development center for about 6 years, and really loved that work every day, sitting down with business owners one-on-one and providing free business coaching. If people aren't familiar, I'm sure your listeners are, but if they're not, small business development centers are all over the country, and almost every area has access to one where businesses can get free coaching and support and training. So that was a lot of fun. Before that, me and my ex-husband started a family plumbing business, and that's where I really fell in love with the business part of owning a business. I always joked how much I hate plumbing, but I learned that I really loved setting up and creating systems and setting up the operations of a business. And while we were really working on that business, I was working in corporate America at the time. And at some point, I had to really take a break from my career to focus on our business full time because it was really growing and I needed it to be more organized. So took a break, had some kids for within a few years, and really worked on the business. And during that time, thought I really want to help some of my friends' businesses. I can see they're not very organized and they're still sending invoices on Excel spreadsheets and things like that. And I was like, I really feel like I could help them. I wonder if there's some way I could make a business where I help other businesses. And during that time, I was also getting my MBA, and I met someone who worked at a Tennessee Small Business Development Center. And every time she would introduce herself in our classes, I was like, that's what I want to do. Like, that's exactly what I want to do. And one day I came across a job opening at our Chattanooga Center and could not. I always joke about how I couldn't apply fast enough. I remember sitting at my kitchen counter and like not even sitting down for 2 hours because I was typing my resume out so fast. And then went to that interview, and me and my former colleagues would always joke how I kind of walked into the interview and was like, this is my job. Give this to me. And they were like, okay. And so that's kind of like going backwards and forwards, my journey. So work came from corporate world, started a business, fell in love with it, wanted to help other businesses. And during my time at the Small Business Development Center, really started to see how we can make a bigger difference in the community and just thinking more broadly about our entrepreneurship ecosystem in Chattanooga. And so when the city job opened, it was just perfect timing and a perfect opportunity for me to kind of live those dreams and execute some of the ideas I had for that.
That's great. We have had a couple of SBDC counselors, one a state director up in Minnesota, and then another counselor down in Florida. So our listeners, if you are interested in diving a little bit more deeper into that SBDC model and what is going on there, then yes, I would definitely encourage people to listen. But I love the idea. Well, first, I love that you manifested that job at the SBDC. First off, it was so
Totally.
good. So
Totally.
good.
And I am a huge believer. I mean, we could have a whole nother episode on manifestation. So
We might need to do that. We might need to do that. I am all in as well. I think it's amazing. So, and then, yeah, so understanding, that your experience as an entrepreneur, working with your ex-husband in that capacity in your business, you understand we all have different roles to play. And for you to want to do that operational side, let him to the technical plumbing side, and as a team to watch the business grow and be a part of that growth is great. So,
and that's what my clients would always say at the SBDC, and that's what really just validated the work that the SBDC does. So many of my clients would come in and they would say, I just know how to make cheesecakes. I don't know how to run a business, or I just know how to take care of kids, or whatever their business model was. And I was like, well, you've come to the right place because I don't know anything about that, but I can help you with your business.
Oh, that's great. So yes, as an entrepreneur myself, I think the first couple of years, I probably pre QuickBooks. I've been in business. I started my business 23 years ago, so it's been a minute. But I probably was doing invoices through Excel for a minute and a half, and then started using QuickBooks and. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, for my birthday, I decided to hire a bookkeeper because I hated doing that
Congrats.
piece.
Yes.
And yes, it was just the greatest gift I could have given myself, to free up that time and the mental capacity to do it. And I was dragging my feet on it when I didn't want to do it. And yes, it's been much better to let me operate in my, zone of genius and fun, and have other people, on the team that can fill those gaps for you. So
it's not easy handing things over. It's hard to let go of that control sometimes, even if it's not, the system's not working. So yeah, that's a big step for a business.
I am. Thank you. So you teased us a little bit with this Chattanooga Business Resource
Yeah.
Collective. I think that is something that our listeners would definitely want to hear about and think how they could create something in their community. I think you've got some best practices set up. So let's talk about it. Tell us about the Business Resource Collective in Chattanooga.
Yeah, thank you. This is something I'm really proud of in our Chattanooga community. It's actually, this is the spirit of collaboration is something that's really a unique feature of Chattanooga, I think, in a lot of different industries, not just the business or entrepreneurship, but Chattanooga we're the perfect size city to really have this beautiful collaboration amongst all industries and whatnot. But starting back in the pandemic, all the entrepreneurship organizations under the leadership of the Enterprise Center, which is a local organization here, they started doing daily phone calls amongst all the different organizations, support organizations, because nobody knew what was going on. And SBA was sending down, final rules every 3 hours, it felt like. And everything was changing constantly. The city was trying to develop grants for businesses. And so they were like, we need to be like brainstorming every single day and just kind of like a situation room almost. So there would be like 75 people on these calls every single day. And that really showed us all just the power of like communication and collaboration. And it was a great time for our SBDC because we were a very misunderstood organization. A lot of people think SBDCs are SBA, and it gave a platform for our SBDC office to really showcase, hey, we're not SBA, but we're getting direct information from SBA. So we were kind of like the source of information for all things PPP and EIDL and everything else. And so those calls eventually went to weekly calls, and then eventually monthly, and then eventually quarterly. And so it was kind of my dream to keep that organize it a little more strongly and formalize it a little bit and keep it going. And I was very inspired also by colleagues of mine in Cookeville, Tennessee. They had formed a business resource collective, which was a collaboration of their development district, their college, and their SBDC. And I was like, we really need that here because we already kind of have a foundation of like, now we know each other, which kind of before the pandemic, we really didn't necessarily. Like there was a lot of confusion of what organization, who does what. And everyone was misunderstood. It wasn't just SBDC. We found out later. No one really knew what the other organizations were doing. So I had this dream. And when I took the job at the city, I kind of took over the email list, so to speak, and we formed the Business Resource Collective. And we're not like a formal entity or anything like that, but we have a more of a systematic way of conducting our meetings. So we meet every other month. And we rotate locations to different support organizations. So last month we had ours at the Urban League. They hosted us. And next week we're going to have it at an organization called the Nonprofit Resource Center. They support nonprofits. And so it's on a different part of town. So we move around, and then we have different themes for our meetings where we'll talk, like at the Urban League, we really focused on funding. And we talked about all the different funding opportunities in Chattanooga. And a lot of us in the room know, but we're like, let's just refresh and talk about if there's been any changes. And then next month, we're going to be talking about resources for nonprofit businesses. And we're going to talk about a business. That area of town has a business network that's really strong, and they're doing a lot of great work. So we're going to hear from them, like what are they doing to support businesses in that part of town. And then we're also going to be supporting our Food Truck Friday that one of our organization has that's in that same area. So it's been great. And usually we have at least 30 people show up, great representation from most of our organizations. And it's really helped us just know each other. What's everyone doing? And the idea is that it creates a no wrong door approach. So if an entrepreneur goes to SBDC, but maybe they're in a different stage of their business or they need a resource that's not really right for SBDC, SBDC is like, but I do know exactly where you should go. Or I know this specific funding that would be good for your business. And it's been great. So it's really kind of created this network, very tight network. And out of that, we formed a special events committee. So we do have some events throughout the year that's truly like a community collaboration. We've done like an expo.
Yeah, I was wondering if they were fun or networking or more educational.
The expo was a little bit, we try to make it fun. And it was an expo to connect entrepreneurs to like professional services and entrepreneurship support organizations. So we had attorneys, CPAs, insurance agents, marketing companies, as well as all the entrepreneurship support organizations. But then our big focus is our Chattanooga Entrepreneur Week, which is a free conference that is fun and educational. We're going to have a DJ this year, so we're very excited about that. to keep the energy up. And we also have a week long full of networking events, pitch competitions. A lot of the organizations in town will host their own events for entrepreneurs during that week. And so we just have it all under the umbrella of Chattanooga Entrepreneur Week.
That's great. Is this your first annual Chattanooga Second, okay.
Second annual Chattanooga Entrepreneur Week. Mm-hmm.
That's great. I'd love to share with the listeners any lessons learned, or maybe even things that you would do differently with your with the collective. What yeah, have you thought about that? Are there things that
I've tried to keep it really manageable, and we haven't had anything go wrong per se. In the beginning, I think there were some folks. One thing I did in the beginning was I created a Google form to have organizations opt in instead of me just putting their name on the list of logo, like these are the organizations in the resource collective. And in the beginning, I wasn't really sure if this was going to be entrepreneur facing. And so we created like an Instagram for the resource collective, and we're like trying to get followers and stuff. But I think at some point I thought, no, let's just really focus on this being a know each other club. And we can do like our events that are going to be entrepreneur facing, but I don't necessarily want the business resource collective to be the wayfinding group. Like we're not that organized yet, and we don't have a website, or that adds a lot more complexity. So we've just really kept it simple. So that's my advice. Like just meeting every other week, and then I send out meeting notes, and that's transformative. Like it doesn't have to be this huge thing where you create a 501(c) and you have a website and you hire someone to like manage intake and wayfinding. It can be that. But we've really kept it simple so far, and it's working and it's manageable so far, but we might dream bigger about where we can go with it down the road, and just thinking about how we can collectively create better resources for the community.
I love the advice. Sometimes you're right. We try to, I don't know, run, hop, jog before we're crawling,
Yeah.
and keeping it a little bit more manageable. That it is certainly, it sounds like you've got a great framework that you can and perhaps will scale as appropriate as needed. But right now, if it's working and you're getting buy-in, I also wrote down that I love that the credit union is sponsoring. It's not something, I don't know what the Chattanooga market's like, but that's not always where you would expect that type of small business partnership and thinking about credit unions. And I love the work that credit unions do anyway. So it's just as an interesting mesh.
We have the most incredible credit union. It's Tennessee Valley Federal Credit Union, TVFCU. And this is actually an interesting story. Probably about 8 years ago, two guys that actually used to work at the Small Business Development Center ended up going to work at the credit union. And they had really seen the need for early stage startup loans in Chattanooga. As you're well aware, you can't just walk into a bank if you're a new business and get a loan. And they thought, we think we can really mitigate the risk and make this happen. So they started this Idea Leap loan program that was up to $50,000. And the way they mitigated the risk was you had to be referred by an entrepreneur support organization. So you had to be working with SBDC or one of our other organizations and have their stamp of approval. And that organization has helped you with your business plan and vetted it for them. And you had to sign an agreement that you're going to get ongoing consulting with that organization throughout the life of the loan. And it was wildly successful and is wildly successful. I think they've had a very minimum default rate, and now they've increased the loan up to $75,000. And so they are just incredibly small business community driven. And with some of the proceeds that they've earned from that loan program, they started doing a pitch competition where they give out, I want to say over $150,000 And they do it in 3 different markets, one in Chattanooga and 2 other markets that they have in the region. And it's become a really big deal. And they have a big pitch night, and it's been great. And that's been going on probably, I think, 7 years now. So I approached them because I was like, I want to have Entrepreneur Week the same week that you have your pitch competition, because you guys have created this great energy. And so that's where we created that partnership. And they said, okay, we'll do it. Let us be the presenting sponsor. And I was like, great. So it was a perfect marriage of bringing our 2 different things together and making it even better.
I love that. I love everything about that, actually. This idea of, this credit union referring back to your ecosystem, to the entrepreneur support ecosystem. And oftentimes, unfortunately, economic development and these resources are communities' best kept secret, and they shouldn't be. And so getting, you know, branching out a little bit more to reach people where they are, is so important. And so if people are coming into the credit union or other lenders, making sure that they are, supporting and aware, and yeah, just a great referral source for the work that you're doing.
Yeah,
That's
no,
awesome.
it's been
Good for
great. It's
you.
been a really great back and forth relationship between them and all the entrepreneurship support organizations, and filled a huge gap. Has helped fund so many, I don't know, probably hundreds of businesses at this point.
That's great. Want to shift topics a little bit and talk about, this procurement process and specifically supplier diversity. So, a question that we've been getting a little bit is, to talk a little bit about the importance of supplier diversity related to an equitable economic growth and development. Um, so, any initiatives or ideas that you have, that you have been working on that help to advance supplier diversity, and maybe things that other communities that are listening could
Hmm.
implement on their side?
Yeah, I love this topic so much. I got really interested in supplier diversity when I worked at the SBDC. I started building a network of folks in our community who worked in that space at our local corporations and anchor institutions. And I was like, whoa, this really can be like game changing for a small business. So I really was bought into it. When I came to work at the city, it's not part of my job description. One thing that's really cool that our mayor set up was an office of equity. So we have our Department of Equity and Community Engagement, and we have a chief equity officer. And we do have a director of supplier diversity, which I think a lot of cities are getting that now. But one thing I've learned is you really do need folks super focused on that. It can't just be part of someone's job description who's doing other work. One thing that's been a really great opportunity at the city is we are pretty heavy participants in organizations like the National League of Cities. We have participated in several cohorts of theirs, which have been incredible learning opportunities for best practices. And I think they're taking applications for this, hopefully when this podcast comes out. But if not, I think it might be something they continue in the years to come. But they have something called the Southern Cities Economic Inclusion Initiative. And it's a cohort of, I want to say it was like maybe 10 Southern cities. And we spent 2 years going to visit these other cities and learning their best practices. So I had the opportunity to go to Savannah and Tallahassee. I came in a little bit late in the game, but my colleagues went to New Orleans and Birmingham as well. And just sitting amongst peers and hearing what they're doing that's working, even very simple things like we raised the question, does your director of supplier diversity, are they in your economic development office or are they in your procurement office? Like what department do they fall under? And that can make a big difference because that person really needs to understand the procurement process. And they need to like have a really close connection and talk to each other. So there was grant funds that came with that project, and we developed a program called Builder's Blueprint. We identified a need in our community. Well, it kind of started with, why aren't minority contractors getting construction jobs in Chattanooga? And then it was, why aren't minority contractors bidding on jobs in Chattanooga? And we start peeling back the layers, and we're like, where are all the minority contractors that can bid on commercial projects in Chattanooga? And then it was, okay, we found some businesses, but why aren't they licensed? And it turns out there's a lot of reasons why people don't get their general contractor license. And there's a lot of barriers. And so we really started tackling that. And we created this program called Builder's Blueprint, where we help folks go. Our tagline is from subs to primes. So we help them, and we're subsidizing their journey into getting licensed so that they can pull permits and bid on projects. And it's a lot. You have to have your books in order and have a financial audit. You have to pay for your exam prep. The books alone are $1,600. And you have to have 10% liquid, or show on your financial statements that you have 10% liquidity for the total dollar amount of jobs you want to do. So if you want to be licensed to a $100,000 job, you have to show that you have $10,000 in liquidity to be able to pay for materials and supplies and incidentals. So we're helping to subsidize that, and we're about to go into our second cohort on that program. A lot of lessons learned in that pilot, for sure. And that's what pilots are for.
Yeah, but no, I mean, oftentimes people don't go into construction thinking, oh, great, I want to spend all my time, in QuickBooks and figuring out these details, or what insurance do I need? And, what paperwork do I need to fill out from state level? So at least giving them your blueprint, this roadmap, this checklist, for goodness sake, of the things that they need to do, I could see that being incredibly helpful, removing some of the barriers.
And we're mentoring them, connecting them with the bookkeepers, providing the CPA to do the financial audit, and giving them a grant at the end, essentially, to provide that 10% liquidity. So that's been a great project. I also participated in another cohort with NLC. And unfortunately, I think they've discontinued this program, but it's their Cities Inclusive Entrepreneurship Program, CIE. And I participated in a cohort that was focused on anchor procurement. And our project out of that ended up being a minority business census. Because again, just going back to basics, it was like, who's got the list of all the minority businesses? It turns out no, everyone has a little bit of a list. Turns out no one. And I don't want to say that. So a lot of our organizations do have like their own lists, but like at the city, we did not have like a big master list. So I contracted with a local firm to do a census and put together a database list that we can use internally. One big idea I had for that list was, let me back up. In Tennessee, we have preemption laws. So we cannot, we have to give bids to the lowest and best offer. So we can't say we have 10% minority goals and choose contracts because someone's minority because we want to meet those goals. We have to choose better or lowest and best offers. But where we do have a lot of power is with our purchase cards. So any purchases under $5,000, whoever has a card has their own discretion to spend that money however they want. And that's where I thought, if our department heads just had a list of all these minority owned caterers and suppliers and professional services, they can pull from that list and we can really move the needle on our P card purchases. So that's some things that we've done at the city. We have a lot of work to do. We really do. And I think a lot of cities do.
I agree. You're not alone,
Yeah.
but finding some workarounds. But finding workarounds is one thing, and I respect when that's for an overall good. And then, but trying to change the system a little bit and figuring out this root problem and how you might be able to help them, whether it is connecting them with additional subject matter experts or financial grants. Oh my gosh, that's That's remarkable. Good for you. So it's interesting because along those lines, and we've been talking about this a little bit, but um, I'm curious in your previous role as a business owner and your, over the last couple of years and everything that you've been doing and connecting people. I'm curious any advice that you have for on either business owners or economic developers in how to make these strong connections and really build relationships with their audiences.
I really feel like my career is based on building relationships. So I love this subject. And I'll go back to what my dad used to always tell me, which was, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I feel like in this job, it has really proven to be true. Um, you can get so much done if you can just like phone a friend and you've built that trust with someone. So to answer your question, the way that I approach relationships is I try to be I truly build the relationship, like not make it transactional, or just, hey, what can you give me and what can I give you? But it's like, how are the kids doing? Like, what'd you do this weekend? Really build a friendship with people and be very authentic. And I feel like when I present myself very authentically and just approach things down to earth, and I'm very genuine. I like talking to people, and I just like hearing their stories and what's a lot of times I forget to like do business because it's like I just want to like hang out with the person, And I think that's really helped me build relationships. So being authentic and making the relationship more about business and not so transactional, and then you earn people's trust. And I have found that once someone trusts you, they'll give you the shirt off their back if you asked for it sometimes. So um, that's really helped. But I think having a professional network is not underrated. Like that is so important and incredibly valued. That's capital.
Yeah, it's interesting when, at different phases in our careers, when we feel really strong about our network or building networks, in different communities and across different industries, whatever that looks like. Somebody was sharing a story with me earlier this week, and there was, um, oh gosh, it was somebody on a stage that was talking about their experience and their background, and everybody in the audience was just wowed by this individual. But I think they were a student maybe, and everybody in the audience was a more seasoned professional. Their default was to reach and pick up their phone, and they were all looking on LinkedIn to connect with this individual, and they were not there.
Oh no.
And so they were like, oh my gosh, what do we do?
What do we
So I
do?
think that the final piece of advice that they gave to this individual was set up this LinkedIn profile. You've got to do that now. Like we all,
Okay, good.
everybody,
I thought you were going to say we're getting away from LinkedIn. I was going to
no,
say, oh no.
no, 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 no. Uh, but yeah, so it is interesting how we have these different ways of creating relationships, and good old fashioned face to face, which is a beautiful thing, to LinkedIn, maybe for ongoing connections. And then you're right, as somebody is a friend and you might need to ask a favor, that might be where the emergency text comes through that you need. But
Yeah. I love LinkedIn, and I got
mhm.
really intentional about it quite a few years ago because I realized that Madison, your producer, and I talked about this years ago. People in the outside world don't know what our credibility is. Like it's our job to put it out there and show the world what our knowledge and expertise is. And that was really powerful. It was a big aha moment. And so I did start sharing, and I feel like I kind of earned my street cred on LinkedIn because how a lot of people didn't know that I have owned a business or that this is the exact kind of work that we're doing at the SBDC or at the city. And the more of a story it is, or more micro level thing, the more engagement and the more people like it, I've noticed. So just being really very real on LinkedIn. And even I just share, People like pictures of faces. That's something we've learned, as opposed to like a logo or a graphic. But get out there and sell yourself, like, humbly, like, share your successes on there and just the work that you're doing. People don't know if you don't tell them. And so you can really build your own credibility on LinkedIn. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, we could definitely go down a big LinkedIn rabbit hole. We will not do that today, but I recently spoke at IEDC and was partnered with my new friend, Melody at LinkedIn, and it was great. We did a little workshop on content creation and some learning. I learned some of the new LinkedIn tools that they have and things that, programs that they're trying to highlight and support connections in different ways. So it
Yeah,
was good.
that's great.
It's good. Maybe I'll bring her Melody in on a future episode. That would be
Yeah.
a fun conversation. Somebody we could all learn a little bit from also. Um, Anyway, being respectful of your time, Sarah, this is so fun. And I know we could drive in to so many other conversations and just sit here and chit chat. Um, Please, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before I ask my final question?
No, just if you want to follow what we're doing in Chattanooga, you can follow the city at City of Chattanooga on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. And we have a lot of great things going on in our community, a lot of innovative things. So follow us, follow me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect. And that's all I've got, I think.
It's awesome. So my final question for the guests is, what was your EDO breakthrough?
For me, this is kind of macro level, but just collaborating with other people, and that organizations and people. So building networks. I've discovered that's really what I'm good at and where I think the magic happens. So creating networks. I have visions of like new networks I want to create and some like visioning groups I want to put together so that we can like create visions. And so I think that the art of bringing people together has allowed me to get so much done. I'm just one person. And so bringing people together who can really move the needle has been a huge game changer, I think, in the work that I do.
The power of collaboration. I thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to our listeners for being here, but truly, especially you, Sarah. Thank you for joining and sharing some of your thoughts.
Thank you.
The EDO Breakthrough Podcast is brought to you by PPR Strategies. PPR Strategies, standing for People and Places Reimagined, is a strategic consulting firm working specifically with EDOs and other place-based organizations. We share the unique stories of communities through communication, strategic planning, marketing, media relations, and more. Visit us at pprstrategies.com and find our contact information in the show notes. I'd like to give a big thank you to you for listening. Remember, together we are unstoppable.